Every day, 34 people in their 20s and 30s are diagnosed with cancer.
On the 7th of July 2015, I was one of the 34.
On the 28th of August 2008, I was one of the 34.
But in Series 2, we're going younger.
We're teaming up with Teenage Cancer Trust to bring you 7 new storytellers.
As 7 13 to 24-year-olds are diagnosed every day.
So, Series 2 focuses on them.
These are the stories of what happens afterwards.
This is AfterThoughts.
The teenage years.
Alice, here we are again. It has been a really long time. How long has it been since I saw you last?
About 20 minutes.
About 20 minutes since we are doing a whole host of recording for AfterThoughts, the teenage years this week.
Absolutely smashing through them.
Absolutely smashing through them. But give me the highlights to your life in that brief time that we didn't see each other. Any highlights?
I had an absolutely excellent lunch. Do you know what? Lunch is like my least favourite meal of the day because I often think it's just a bit crap.
Yeah.
And I was looking through the quick roasting tin. So you may have come across the green roasting tin or the roasting tin or the quick roasting tin. I was flicking through that last night and I saw a recipe for giant couscous, halloumi with spinach, red onion and chickpeas. And I was like, get in my face. So I bought all the ingredients on the way back from the gym and then I put them all together and cooked it before we did our first recording, and then I ate it in between our first recording and second recording of the day. And let me tell you, I do not want to give the leftovers to my husband for him to have for his lunch tomorrow.
He doesn't need it. You take it all for yourself.
Right. What about you?
Well, I mean, my word, did I hit the exciting moment of my day when I in our little break I grated 600 grams of carrots because I'm making carrot soup after we finish this, and I was listening to Taylor Swift. So there you go.
Yeah, that's a nice balance of middle-aged and your actual age, I think.
Yeah.
Somewhere in between the two. But then after our food-based endeavours, we were joined by the fantastic Debora.
Yeah, all the way from Edinburgh. And my word, have we had a great afternoon and heard some incredible stories.
Yeah, I loved. I can't wait for our audience, our listeners, to hear Debora talk about cyberbeam therapy.
I mean, proton beam. Therapy. Great,
yeah,
you were listening.
I can't wait for our listeners to hear Debora talking about proton beam therapy.
Don't think that we're going to cut that. No,
I got confused between cyberknife and proton beam and just combined them. But
I'm so happy with it. It's fine.
I loved listening to that story, and I can't wait for our audience to hear that. And I liked her description of how it works as well, because I never knew that.
Fascinating stuff. And I mean, Debora is so brilliant at crafting a story and taking us to these different places and introducing us to topics that talking about surgeries and the traumas after surgeries, and then also telling us about the kindness of strangers. I mean, it's full to the brim. Can't wait for people to listen to it.
Is it just me, or do you want a mince pie?
Oh, we're not at mince pie time yet.
Why not?
2 words. Why not?
Anyway, here's Debora.
Hello and welcome to another episode of AfterThoughts. Hi, Alice.
Hi, Toby. How are you doing?
I am all right, thank you. And we are so excited today to welcome Debora to our podcast today. Hello, Debora.
Hello. It's great to be here.
Debora, where are you zooming in from today?
Edinburgh. Cold Edinburgh in Scotland.
Oh, yeah. I bet it is chilly up there.
Oh, it's got a bite to it. The weather definitely does. Keeps you awake.
Brilliant. My grandma she's a Londoner, and I used to my family live in the north, and my grandma used to say it was 2 jumpers colder up north and 3 in Scotland.
Yes, correct. I'd say even 4 and a coat.
Brilliant.
We always like to kick off the start of an episode with our quickfire questions, don't we, Alice?
Yep, only they're not that quick fire, usually because I ask extra questions and get excited about answers. But yeah, we hope that they're quick fire, but they never actually are.
That's right. And I've just got my pages right, so I'm all ready to go. Alice, are you all ready to go?
I am ready to go.
Fabulous. Let's kick off. Debora, could you please give us the pronouns that you use?
She, her.
And who do people say that you look like?
Oh no. Let's see. No one really. My boyfriend makes fun of me and says I look like the guy from Moana. Because I've got big curly hair.
I love that. I mean, it sounds like he's just jealous of your curly hair.
Yeah,
I certainly
he's a dickhead. Yeah.
If you could be any toy, what toy would you be?
I don't know. A Bratz doll, because they're like Barbies, but cooler.
Nice. I like that a lot.
You know, they've got edge.
They do have edge.
They're just like cool. They're
Google
like bad bitches, you know? Yeah.
It's like
cool.
Bratz, Bratz. Google it.
Right. This is why we don't have a quickfire round, because you do things like this. So you're like Google right in the middle of the quickfire round, and then I quickly go, okay, all right, Bratz dolls. Okay, here we go. Oh, there was a movie. Yes, I can see. Oh, there's lots of them. You can get a selection for $3.99 used on eBay if you want them.
I don't think I'd be buying used toys at the moment.
No, do you know? Can I just tell you that? Oh God, I know this is ruining the quickfire things. I saw the saddest sight yesterday. I was walking home, and as I came around the corner, saw a collection of toys on the floor outside somebody's house. A Buzz Lightyear toy just lying on the floor.
Did you bring it home with you?
No, I had my bike actually, so I was like, I can't do it. I can't pick it up. But one of the saddest sights I've ever seen.
Debora, what is your favourite biscuit?
Oh my god, I really like biscuits. This is so hard. Oh, by the way, thank you for the biscuit.
Oh yay, you're welcome.
That's really good. Boring chocolate chip. Always solid. Never had a bad chocolate chip.
Fair.
Too true. If you had a teleporter right now, where would you teleport to in the world?
New Zealand or Hawaii.
Oh, great. What is your go-to dish to either eat or to cook?
Very different for eating and cooking, because my cooking abilities are pretty awful. To cook, noodles, solid.
Yum.
Vegetable noodles. To eat, ramen, always like that.
That's the second ramen we've had of the day.
2 ramens of the day. And
Good taste.
Final question, the big one: cat or dog?
Cat. No, that's cat. Cat.
Oh yes.
Cat.
Cat come back. Cat come back on the cards. Thank you, cat.
Always cat.
And also, Debora, we would love to hear just a kind of one-line summary of your cancer experience.
I was diagnosed with a brain tumor when I was 19, and I had a couple of surgeries and proton beam therapy.
I'm so geeky for proton beam therapy. I'm very excited by that.
So cool.
Okay, so Debora, it's really great to have you here, and I am very excited to kick this off with our first section, Beyond a Diagnosis. We know that lots of people have their diagnosis story that they can roll out whenever they're asked on cue. It always is the same. And we're really interested in the stories that come after that diagnosis. So,
of course. Obviously quite hard because so many cool moments after diagnosis. But one that really stands out with how like ridiculously lovely it is, like it would be like from some kind of feel-good cancer film. So I was on the neurological ward, neurosurgery, neuroscience. I think there's a difference. If a doctor's listening, they'll get mad at me. Sorry. In my bay, there were 4 ladies, very lovely, very funny. The ones that were awake, great personalities. And when I was treated up here in Scotland, even better, because Scottish people, I'm sorry, objectively the funniest people. And it was just very quiet, because a lot of people with neurological conditions, don't do much. Sadly, a couple of people in a coma. I don't know, there was definitely a sense of friendship there among the people that spoke, because it was just so boring, and nothing connects people like utter boredom. I think so. They would just get talking. It would be like in scenes from prison movies where you'd reach a point and someone goes, "So what are you in for? What are you in for? What are you in for?" And I got to know quite a bit about all the different conditions and stuff. And there would be some really awkward moments where they'd all be talking about their children at home or grandchildren. And you're like, "Oh, I'm at university." But no, it was really nice. And nurses are always really nice on neurological wards. Maybe it's just with all cancer patients. Yeah, but they're always just really nice. And my mom's a nurse, and she's told me that a lot of neurological nurses can be almost as crazy as the patients, which was really nice. It wasn't decorated for Christmas, but there was still, a really nice sense of family and just niceness in general. And I was feeling a bit low, a bit miserable. Not really because of the diagnosis, but just like being like young and surrounded by a lot of older people. And I was saying to my mom, she'd visit me every day, and it was November time, and like the world had gone into Christmas mode, like ridiculously, like everywhere advertising. And I was like, "Oh, I'd really like a mince pie. Can't wait to go to the Christmas markets, blah, 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 blah," just going on and on and on. And there was a lady opposite me whose husband would visit her every day, and he must have heard me, going on to my mom, because later on that day, after he'd like gone to the Pret downstairs, yeah, because the hospital I was in is so posh, they had a Pret. He came over with a little brown paper bag and was like, "Oh, I think you'll like this." And he put it down, and there was a little mince pie inside. And I almost started crying over a mince pie in the John Radcliffe neuroscience ward. That was so lovely, and that was so kind. And I think he recognized that I was like, obviously the youngest patient there, and just felt a bit crap. Just wanted something to cheer me up. Because I couldn't go downstairs and get one myself because I had a drain in my head that meant I like couldn't move much. First of all, it just made me feel really overwhelmed because I'd already encountered so much niceness in the form of my neurosurgeons, the nurses, and everything. So that was just like the amazing cherry on top of the cake of, oh my God, people are so nice, what the hell? Because I've heard some cancer patients talk about how they experience a lot of false niceness, and I think it's called grief tourism, where people just want to hop onto the like train and see what's going on and then leave. But I didn't really experience that. I was just like astounded by how nice people are. And if I saw him now, I'd say, yeah, just give him a big thank you. I'd like to give him a hug, but I probably shouldn't because of COVID. Yeah, love him, great guy.
I love that. And for those of you who are listening, Deborah just blew a little kiss to the air for that nice man.
I hope it reaches him wherever he is in the south of England.
So next on Afterthoughts, we are diving into the Those Around Us section. Those Around Us is looking at stories that focus on the fact that cancer may happen directly to one person, but it influences so many more. And so this is an opportunity to highlight those around us who go through those stories with us. So Deborah, over to you for Those Around Us.
Yeah, I'd quite like to speak about my parents, who were just so funny. Like, a lot of people say how their parents were supportive, which my parents obviously were, but they also just like made me laugh every day, which was actually quite annoying because I had stitches at the back of my neck, which hurt quite a bit. First one, my stepdad, probably the reason I stayed sane, 100%. He would just let me talk so much crap to him. We just listen to my like steroid rants. That's something that so many cancer patients are familiar with, the steroid mania. I remember on the 14th of November was my first big brain surgery. It was a big boy 10-hour one. And I was absolutely terrified the night before, as you'd be before brain surgery. My stepdad was just sitting by my bedside and he went, well, you know, it could be worse. I was like, how could it be worse? It's like you could be a patient you could be a prisoner somewhere in America waiting to die by lethal injection the next day. And my mom was like, John, how can you say that? And he always just said little things like that made me laugh. He was amazing. And then my mom, she would just like rally me to get my shit together. In hospital, like I would just lie there and the nurse would be like, do you want to go for a shower? And I just couldn't be bothered, you know, because when you're ill, you can't really be bothered. And she would, when it was visiting time, she'd come in and say, get up, shower now. She'd help me, she'd carry all my soap and stuff. Like, I don't want to, I feel gross. I don't care, I'll help you shave your legs. And she just did, and she was so lovely. And they were just, I remember after visiting hours ended in hospital, this was every day, every single day, I'd message them and say, okay, what are you guys doing? And they'd just go to the bar. They'd go get a gin and tonic, because near where they were staying there was an Ivy. They'd treat themselves to a gin and tonic, and then they would go to you know those food carts outside. There's a really famous one in Oxford called Hassan's, and they'd my mom, who I have on Snapchat because I'm really sad, would send me a selfie of her, and it would obviously be surrounded by students because those are the only people that went, and my parents would go and get a kebab and coleslaw and take it back to where they were staying. So that was their little tradition, and it always just made me laugh because they were just so funny. They would just get on with it and make sure I shaved my legs.
Moving on now, we are going to talk about invisible impacts. Now, with cancer treatment, we think a lot about the kind of visible impacts, the scars and, you know, the hair loss and whatever, but actually there's so many invisible impacts. And one of the things that we want to do with AfterThoughts is shine a light on some of these invisible impacts. So Debora, I'm going to hand over to you to tell us a story around that theme.
For me, the biggest invisible impact is how it affects your mental health. It is literally like someone takes a wrecking ball and smashes through any shred of mental stability that you have. And I think a lot of, like you said, a lot of people don't really realize it because they sort of look at, you know, person going through chemotherapy, physically ill, person really ill after surgery, stem cell transplant, whatever. But no one thinks about the really lasting impact of it. So I've had 3 surgeries to my brain. One to remove a bone flap to deal with hydrocephalus, and which is really weird when I think about it actually, and 2 to debulk and eventually remove the tumour. And the last 2 surgeries, the second tumour removing surgery and the bone flap removing surgery, actually almost felt like chores. I was like, oh god, okay, here we go again. I'm going to be out of the game for a while. I'll have to deal with this. But the first one, the one I spoke about earlier, the big boy 10-hour one, oh my god, that was absolutely terrifying. There's literally nothing more terrifying than knowing that you'll have brain surgery the next day. So I remember when I first went into hospital, because I had hydrocephalus, they put a drain in my head. That was definite. But then they're like, oh, we don't know when you'll have the surgery. Maybe it'll be next week. Maybe it'll be this week. We'll see when your surgeon can slot you in. And then they found out that it would be that week. It would be on Thursday in a couple of days. And a nurse came in and said, "Oh, your surgery will be this week. It'll be on Thursday. Yay!" And I was like, "Oh, great, that's fantastic." So I just spent the next few days just sort of having an extended breakdown, because it's a completely new experience. You don't know how to prepare for it. I did the cardinal sin that no cancer patient should ever do, and I Googled. That is the absolute worst thing to do. That should be banned on the NHS. Googling cancer should be blocked in hospitals, but I did it. I was absolutely terrified because results had come up for awake surgery, which I wasn't even having. But yeah, it's exactly what you think it is. You're awake when someone's digging in your brain. And I was just thinking about that, and I was so scared. And I remember on the way down to the operating theatre to get the general anesthetic administered, I was absolutely shaking. I was freezing. I thought I was going to be sick. The head nurse plopped a sick ball on my bed because I was just terrified. And she was actually so nice. Shout out to her. She was like, "Give her another blanket now." But then it was fine, it was a big 10-hour surgery. Felt like a blink for me. Shout out general anesthetic. Absolutely love that stuff. And waking up was fine because I was absolutely off my nut. And I found out later on that as I was being put to sleep, I was telling the anaesthetist how much I wanted an Aperol spritz. So obviously I wasn't feeling that sad. And then recovery was pretty chill. I remember my surgeon came and I said, "Oh, what would you advise for me to do in my recovery, like for my neck?" And he was like, "Oh, I know this sounds cruel, but movement would be the best thing for your neck muscles." And I said, what if my stitches pop or something? And he just put his hand on my bed railing, looked me in the eye and said, "Debora, trust my stitches." And I was like, "Okay, I'm sorry." And then it was fine, in hospital afterwards, it was fine. Like I said, the other surgeries, they felt like chores. Treatment, I had minimal side effects. It was fine. So I think people, because I didn't speak about it that much, and be like, "Oh my God, this is awful." People thought, okay, yeah, it's going well. But then when it all finished, whew, it was like someone hit me with a truck. It was awful. This summer was basically just spent having an extended breakdown. It's a delayed reaction, and I wasn't aware of how common it was among cancer survivors that the trauma hits you not really during treatment or surgery, because you're in survival mode. You're full of adrenaline. As soon as it all ends, as soon as you've not got the support of seeing your oncologist frequently and being surrounded by nurses in a hospital, it's really terrifying being in the real world. And after the sort of more active breakdown finished, I've noticed that it's stuck around in other ways. Every time someone says the word head, I start breathing a bit more heavily. Or we're about to head into the month of November, and that was my diagnosis month, and I'm already feeling a bit jittery about it. And it's just, I don't know. I have to laugh because if I didn't laugh, I'd cry. How these little words can just affect you. It's so, it's so odd. Like in my Spanish course, we study films, and in the films, some of the characters deal with cancer, and I've not even started yet. I don't even know how I'm gonna get through that. And I don't think people realize, I'm not angry about it because you don't really think about it, but I do think it's invisible, and I want more people to know about how it can affect you after treatment. Because I know a tagline for this podcast, or at least something you guys say a lot, is cancer doesn't end after treatment is over. And my God, it really doesn't. I realize that. Yeah.
We just don't talk about it enough.
No, I didn't know about it. I wish more people spoke about it and nurses warned you about it.
Yeah. I think though, part of me is like, oh, I wish they'd told me when I was diagnosed that basically I would be terrified for at least 5 years, because I was, because of all of my surgeries, my
Yes.
treatment lasted longer than it should have done. But I feel like if they did tell you that, people would be jumping off bridges, you know. Like, I think it's almost better that they're like, just figure it out yourself.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yes.
like it's interesting, because I think every storyteller that we've had on has referenced in some way, whether directly or indirectly, has referenced some kind of lingering trauma that they have from their cancer treatment. And I know that Toby and I have both got them. And like, my husband has really bad eczema, and he uses a cream that I had to use on my skin when basically chemo made my skin break out into like red welts, and it was horrendous. So all around my eyes and on my hands and on my elbows and stuff, my skin was really bad. And whenever he uses that cream, I'm like, oh,
Is it the smell?
yeah, the smell.
It's always the smells. Yeah, it's always
as
the
soon as I
smells.
smell it, I'm like, get out, like literally get
Yeah.
out.
So our next section on Afterthoughts is a new one for this series, and it is the teenage kicks. It's just teenage kicks, but we'll go with it. It's fine. Teenage kicks, and this is us trying to explore the differences that somebody who has gone through cancer might have had as a teenager compared to somebody who has not, and shining a light on those moments. So, Debora, we're going to go over to you for your story on teenage kicks.
Yeah, I think something really cool, well, not cool because it's cancer, but cool, that I want to talk about is proton beam therapy. It's not many people know about it. It's, like I said, extremely cool, quite modern, quite advanced. It's basically, now forgive me if you know more than I do. When it comes to science, my brain switches off, so I know the basics. But it's like radiotherapy, but more targeted. So it doesn't affect. So what happens with radiotherapy is it goes to where the tumor is, but as it goes to where the tumor is, it goes through healthy cells, and as it exits where the tumor is, at the exit point, it again goes through healthy cells. But with proton beam therapy, is they can play around with the dosage. So it can be a low dose as it gets to the tumor, so it doesn't affect healthy cells as much. And when it gets to the tumor, it's the highest dose, and then it doesn't exit. That's it. So it's so cool. It's amazing. I want to shout to everyone about it. Not just because it's cool, but because there is only one active high dose center in the UK, Christie in Manchester, amazing place. Another one being built in London. I don't know what COVID will do to that, but that's really cool. And for that, I did 6.5 weeks in Manchester at the start of COVID. I distinctly remember on the car journey to Manchester for the first time reading articles about how COVID was at its worst in Manchester and my heart just starting to beat a bit faster. But that was, I think, as far as cancer treatment goes, it was the easy mode, I guess, because it was just really calm. It's very nice, beautiful new building. Didn't really get to speak to the other patients much because, Corona. But we just sort of look at each other across the room and do that very British thing where you just go smile and nod. So that was fine. But like I spoke about with surgery earlier, the sort of effects don't really hit you until after it ends. And I'm talking about the mental effects because I didn't really have many side effects as such because of the nature of proton beam therapy. It's quite targeted, and I found that I couldn't really connect to people my age that much anymore, because it's just, I don't know, I think a lot of cancer patients will face this whatever age they're at. It's quite hard to connect with people once you've dealt with your own mortality. You're like, oh, how do I speak to you? And I found that it's not sort of out of me not caring. I feel quite bad about it. But when friends will talk about, oh, can't go clubbing or can't do this, or I've got, this teenagery problem, it feels like there's sort of a wall separating you, because you're like, oh, I don't know. You're like, oh, I've seen another part of life. I've seen life-saving treatment. I've, lain there with a mask over my head for 6.5 weeks. So it just, I don't know, it's quite a double-sided thing, because on one side you're having this amazing treatment that's just, feat of human achievement, and you're like, wow, how, I'm so lucky to be in a country that provides this for me. But on the other side, you sort of don't feel like, I don't know, I felt like myself, but you don't feel like, you don't match the idea of what someone your age should be like. You're kind of, because teenagers are meant to be, a bit sillier, a bit more disconnected from reality, not really caring about much. But suddenly, you're thinking about the things you've been forced to think about, life and death and stuff. So you can't really go back to that innocence, I guess.
Moving on, we are now going to start shining a light on some of the lost conversations around cancer treatment. People are talking about cancer much more than they used to, but there's still always ways that we can talk about it more. So, Debora, over to you to hear a story about the lost conversations of cancer.
Well, people are talking about cancer more, but not enough, I think, especially not young people, and especially not women. I don't think it's enough. I know about this personally, quite passionate, because I spent a year getting told that I should check out mindfulness apps. So if anyone ever recommends the Calm app to me ever again, I will hit them. I spent a year with chronic neck pain that got increasingly worse, and I saw a couple of GPs, said, oh, you're young, you're a woman going through hormonal changes, you're anxious, shut up. And then when I got to uni, the vomiting started as well. That's an absolutely classic brain tumor thing, by the way, vomiting plus pain in the upper area of your body. That's absolutely classic. Kind of mad at myself for not recognizing it, but retrospect is a killer. And I just got told lots and lots and lots of times, you're anxious, you're just stressed, try these breathing exercises, try going on long walks, try swimming in cold water. That's a thing in Scotland. And it would just drive me crazy, because I would be doing all these things, experiencing this intense neck pain that would wake me up, multiple times a night. By the end, before I got diagnosed, I wouldn't be able to walk down the street without having to stop because of the pain. And it just makes me really angry, because it happens so often to young people. Because you're young, you can't possibly get cancer. Absolutely no way. Which, first of all, a bit rude to older people, that they're expected to be ill, chill out. Second of all, it makes you think that you're indestructible as a young person. It makes you think that nothing can ever go wrong. And that just makes me really angry. And I think it is a bit worse if you're a young woman. And I've heard a lot recently about women being discriminated against in medicine and sexism in medicine. For example, it's a big thing with autism. A lot of women get misdiagnosed because the criteria are based on what men experience. And I'm really pissed off that it happens with cancer as well, because always, with things like endometriosis as well, you're hormonal, it's natural, you're hormonal, it always happens. So I'm really passionate about people talking about how common misdiagnosis is, and how for a lot of students, brain tumors are not, are not found, because you're a student, you're going to be stressed, you're going to get things like double vision, which I had, you're going to get headaches from studying a lot. And I just really, really want people to not be scared to advocate for themselves. So I saw 3 doctors and 2 physios. 2 of the doctors were here in Scotland, and 1 doctor was in France, because I was working as a nanny in France at the time that the neck pain started. And I remember that doctor in France, oh, I could give him a slap. I came to see him, and he just sort of looked at me and went, neck pain. I'm not even going to try and say it in French. Neck pain. And I went, yeah. He didn't even bother to come and examine the back of my neck. He said, okay, do this, and a prescription for ibuprofen. So that was great. And then I oh no, I remember a couple of days before I was properly diagnosed, I went to see a physio, because this neck pain had gotten absolutely unbearable. Like, I would, lie on the ground in my uni room in pain. And he did his thing. And at the end of his I probably shouldn't call it a massage, because they do more than a massage. I really don't want to offend any physios, because I do love them. At the end of his treatment, he said, oh, that was great. If that doesn't cure your neck pain, I'm a bad physio. So the joke's on him, because I had a brain tumor. And then what happened was, for 2 weeks leading up to my diagnosis, I had issues with balance and double vision, because where my tumor was located at the back of my head, it does cause issues with balance. And because it was causing hydrocephalus, which created pressure in my head, it literally felt like someone was squeezing it like that. It gave me double vision. So I woke up Monday morning, and I had about 10 seconds of just pitch black. I couldn't see anything at all, which is terrifying. So so what did I do? I went to my tutorial, because I was really proud of the essay I'd written. Talked about that. During the tutorial, I still had quite bad double vision. So I went back to my room and I called my mum, because that's what everyone does when they have a problem. And I definitely downplayed how bad my symptoms were, because my mum worries. And she said, look, there's at the John Radcliffe in Oxford, there's an ophthalmology unit, an eye unit. So just, call them, ask them what to do. And I said, okay. I called them. She did a sort of assessment over the phone, asked me to look in different directions, and said, right, just, make an emergency appointment with your Specsavers. So like, oh God, I was going to write an essay today, but okay. And at that point, looking back now, I realized that my symptoms were really bad. They were awful. But when you live with chronic conditions, you learn to live with it. You don't realize how bad it is. And I went to Specsavers, and the Specsavers is in the centre of Oxford. It's about 5 minutes away from my college. And I had to leave half an hour before, because at that point, my balance issues and vision issues were so bad that, and the roads around the centre are quite busy. So I just needed that extra time. So I stumbled into the Specsavers, like sort of made my way upstairs. She did the eye test, and at the end of the eye test, she was quite quiet, and that's when I knew. She was like, I'm just going to give you a letter, just go to the hospital, I've seen something about at the back of your eye. It could be nothing, but just go. And I just knew. And all my friends were like, oh, it's fine, it could be nothing. But I don't know, I had the sixth sense. And I spent that day getting scans and tests, and that was when I found out. A funny story, in the taxi ride on the way to the hospital, I was crying on my best friend's lap, and I was saying, please God, let this be nothing, if it's nothing, I'll become a nun. And the taxi driver turned around and he was like, you don't know what the nuns get up to. And I'll always remember that, because that made me smile in the middle of my most intense breakdown ever.
So the last section of Afterthoughts is an opportunity for us to look at the lighter side of cancer experience. We know that there are so many heavy moments when you go through cancer, but there are lighter moments, and this is an opportunity to share those with our listeners. So Debora, it's over to you for the Don't Laugh section.
You know, this was actually the hardest section to prepare for, because there's so many funny things that happen during cancer, but they're only funny to cancer patients, because I think we develop such a weird, twisted perspective on things. So there's stories that I've told, you know, the average layman that hasn't had cancer, and they just look at me like, oh my God, you need therapy. They're just funny, you know? But I think the one that I like the most is about my sort of stitches, staples that I had at the back of my head. So like I said, my first two surgeries were down in Oxford, and afterwards my surgeon likes for the stitches to be removed in the hospital that you had the surgery in. It's different for every surgeon, but that was just his preference. So my mum and I had to, after my surgery, just sort of exist around Oxford for a couple of weeks. And obviously existing around Oxford meant walking around with my hair up in the most disgusting, crusty, messy bun, because I couldn't wash my hair, and with a sort of line of gauze all along here with, God, I can't even, it's like that big. I can't even imagine how many staples were in there, 20 something. And just to make it even nicer, it had little patches of blood on the back, because as wounds do, it bled. And I would just, you know, walk around, do my thing. We'd go shopping, we'd, you know, go to museums and stuff. It would be completely normal. Obviously not for everyone around us who saw that. And my favorite moment is my mom and I were at a pizza place, because I was on steroids at the time. And if you've been on steroids, you're aware of the hunger. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And I just wanted to fill my face with carbs. And I had my back facing the window, and we were eating. And my mom just started laughing. And I said, oh, it's so funny. It's just pizza. And she said, no, people keep looking in the window, as they do when they pass a restaurant, to look at the food. And then she said, I can see them looking at your golden staples and recoiling in horror. And I love that story, because people were looking and thinking, oh, look at a lovely margarita, and just seeing this disgusting, crusty hair, shaved thing, and staples digging into skin, dried blood on the gauze. Oh my God, I wish I could have seen their faces.
I wonder how many people you put off coming into the restaurant.
Yeah, I know. I probably destroyed their business for the day.
Oh my goodness, I love
word.
that. I had drains for my mastectomy, not the same as like brain drains, but drains.
Oh, I've seen those. Yeah.
Yeah, you have them in like
Yeah.
little bags that you put over your shoulder. And I just remember, like, anytime I went out and saw like a new person, I'd be like, do you want to see my drains? And they had like clots floating around in them, and it was like basically just really disgusting bloody liquid. And I was like,
yeah, look at my weird stuff. I'd always get people to poke the bag with my brain fluid, because I had the drain and it was attached to a bag, and it was cold, and I was fascinated by this. And when I got a visitor, I'd be like, poke it, do it, touch it, do it, and they'd be so freaked out. But I love it, and I have so many photos of it, and it's so cool, because who gets to sit there with their internal fluids beside them?
right,
Not
I was
enough
exactly
people.
the same. Not enough people. That's
know?
right, Toby. Oh man, that was great. Love that. Great story.
So that brings us to the end of this episode of Afterthoughts. Deborah, thank you so much. Just some incredible stories, and it's amazing to have you on with us. But thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, it's been
Thank
fab.
you.
I have laughed a lot this afternoon. I don't know if that's just because I'm a bit hyperactive, but yeah, just I've laughed a lot at some of your stories. Maybe that shows the dark humor of cancer patients more than ever.
Oh, definitely.
Also, I'm going to do this. Kiss to the world.
Kiss the world.
Yeah, you've got to send out the good vibes. Kiss the world.
Amazing.
You can't kiss people in person, so you've got to.
I love it. Thank you so much, Deborah. It's been an absolute treat to have you here.
Thank you. It's been great to natter to someone because therapy is too expensive. So it's good to talk about it with anyone that will listen to me.
So there was Debora, Alice, and
Oh man, what a treat!
what a treat. I'm just having such a great time hearing and being inspired by these different stories that we're hearing from all our storytellers. And Debora just like I was really taken by these kind of moments of humanity and kindness, like talking about her parents, to the man delivering the mince pie. I just think to the person in the proton beam who's like taking her through and stuff like that. I just like so much humanity.
Agreed. And do you know what? Just to echo what you just said, actually, I get so annoyed when people say, "Oh, Alice is so inspirational." I'm like, I'm not inspirational. I just didn't spontaneously combust when I had cancer. But all week, every storyteller we've sat down with, I've felt really inspired by. And, you know, it's kind of hypocritical for me to say that. But I just think, yeah, they've been so generous again. And yeah, I loved hearing Debora's stories.
So tell me what your afterthoughts on the episode are.
My afterthoughts on this episode of Afterthoughts, my main one is I thought having drains from my boob was bad. Can't imagine having drains from your brain. Toby, what about you? What are your afterthoughts on this episode of Afterthoughts?
For me, there was just this moment of talking about a culture of awareness and how important it is for us to be aware of cancer and of what happens in treatment, but also what happens afterwards. And I really think that Debora talked so much about that, of like not knowing the trauma that was going to come, and just the importance of us talking about it, so we're as prepared if we're going through treatment for the future, but if we're post treatment, us understanding what we might be going through as well is shared by others, and finding a way to get the support we need.
Preach it. It's all about reducing the stigma, isn't it? And you know, talking is a great way to do that. What a great afternoon.
What a great afternoon. And that's it for another episode of Afterthoughts. So we hope you enjoyed listening. And just to remind us, Alice, there is still a hashtag, isn't there?
Hashtag Dogs of Afterthoughts.
Can I just also offer, if you want to send cats in, because now we know that Debora likes cats, I think that's fine.
Hashtag Cats of Instagram. No, hashtag Cats of Afterthoughts. Also very, very welcome.
See you soon.
See you next time.
Bye.
If today's episode of Afterthoughts has brought up any thoughts or feelings that you'd like to speak to somebody about, we really recommend grabbing a cuppa with a friend or dropping them a message on WhatsApp. There are also tons of charities out there who can help you if you've been through cancer and need a bit of extra psychological support. Thanks so much to Teenage Cancer Trust for supporting Afterthoughts, the teenage years, and supporting teens and young adults diagnosed with cancer in the UK. The work they do is incredible. Find out more at teenagecancertrust.org. Afterthoughts is produced by Alice May Purkiss and Toby Peach from Beyond Arts, with sound design by Kieran Lucas.